Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for joining us for Stars of Franchising.
Get ready for a roller coaster ride through the world of franchising as we bring you the best stories of inspiration and entrepreneurial grit and turning dreams into franchise realities.
That's right, Vinny. From emerging to global brands, we'll chat with the genius minds behind the magic. All brought to you by the Tariq Farid Franchise Institute at Babson College. I'm Ab.
And I'm Vinny. Now, buckle up for some serious inspiration.
In this episode of Stars of Franchising, we sit down with Scott Greenberg, award-winning franchisee turned international keynote speaker and author of The Wealthy Franchisee and Stop the Shift Show. From building a top-performing edible arrangements operation to coaching thousands of franchise leaders around the world, Scott has seen firsthand what separates thriving franchisees from struggling ones. We explore his journey from adversity to achievement, his insights into mindset and culture, and how he's helping businesses elevate performance through people-first leadership. And we'd like to start with asking our guests, and we'll ask you, what is your why? What calls you to do what you do?
And the answer to that question, I think, has changed over the years.
Yeah.
Originally when I was in college, my goal was just to conquer the world, right? Just
Yeah.
make money, have power, just be a successful person. I was really ambitious. And I was in grad school and was diagnosed with cancer. It's been many years. I'm totally fine today. But that experience going through that treatment at that age, it really kind of helped me set the reset button on what mattered. And I know that I'd like to tell stories, which is a big part of what I do, but the idea of helping people really, is something that's become a bit of a passion. So now I do it through speaking and writing and through business. And so I just, having, been through that bout with cancer, with a lot of other people battling cancer at the same time in the treatment center, I just saw how everybody's experience of it was so different based on how they were responding. And I've seen that same dynamic in other places, including in franchising, right? How we respond to it. And I thought, wow, maybe this is a playground where I could learn and where I could help other people understand the impact they can make on their own lives and their own businesses. So my why at this point is to help other people succeed in franchising and, get the most out of their lives.
I love it. Well, let's go back to the early days as you described it. When you started your career and had a background in storytelling and film, how did that creative path eventually lead you to franchising, Scott?
So at the end of my cancer treatment, a friend of mine was putting on a conference and said, why don't you come and be our keynote speaker and tell your story and how it applies to leadership? Mm-hmm. I thought that'd be a one-off speech. And that kicked off what's now been a 32-year career as a professional speaker. And my content, morphed over the years, as you can imagine. But I started off talking about overcoming adversity and then peak performance and leadership. But it always bothered me that so many of my audience members had more experience managing and leading than I had. And then I saw an airline magazine ad for edible arrangements. And I thought, this is the coolest thing. I never looked at any other franchise. I thought the product was cool. I went to Discovery Day. And I liked the idea of not giving up speaking, but getting some real world experience in business, managing employees, serving customers. So that one magazine ad, it got me on a flight. It got me signing lots of checks. And it was 10 years of my life still speaking, but building those two businesses. And I made money, had great experience, but also enhanced my speaking.
So there was two stores originally in Los Angeles, correct?
Yeah, well, one originally that we built, and then 6 years in, we acquired a second store that someone else had opened.
Okay, got it. So let's talk a little bit about the biggest mindset shift you had going from, or still being a storyteller and speaker, but into an operations role, with the stores.
So sort of a mindset shift. I mean, for me personally, it was really appreciating the realities and difficulties of running a business. I went into it as a motivational speaker, so I came in a little cocky, right? I had these nuggets of wisdom, like there's no I in team. My team members didn't care how you spell team. And so we had all kinds of issues. We had all kinds of problems that required more than me spouting cliches or having a positive attitude. I need to learn about cutting costs. I need to learn about influencing people. I had to learn about really sticking to the system and not thinking that I knew better than Edible Arrangements Corporate, or that my location, my territory was unique, was different from other people. So it's sort of about letting go of what I thought I knew and really opening my mind to smarter, experienced people who were doing it and figured out how to do it well.
So when you're operating your own stores, as you had that realization in managing the team and moving on from just the cliches, as you say, were there some daily habits that you employed that worked for you to get that turnaround and mindset to you and the employees?
Eventually, the first year was survival mode,
Yeah.
right? First year is what do we do when we ring the doorbell and there's no one there to receive this perishable arrangement, right? It was like, how many employees do we need? But once we got the operation down, then I could take a step back and ask bigger questions. And I had a manager who's equally curious. So we spent a lot of time just thinking and talking and reflecting on what we were doing. Again, I hadn't given up speaking, and I was worried that, if I fail in this business or have a lot of problems, then I'm a hack on stage and I can't have that. So
Right.
I really opened up my edible stores as a way to learn as much as a place to earn. So all that reflection and asking the bigger questions really helped. So it's not just what can I do about that one employee, but
Right.
what can I do in general to engage employees? Like those bigger, broader questions really served me because it gave me the nuanced answers with my own employees, but it gave me the takeaways that I could share on stage.
Got it. Well, in your book, The Wealthy Franchisee, you talk about how, quote, mindset trumps mechanics. Can you explain what that means and how it applies to franchise success when you're talking to other franchisees?
Yeah, one of the reasons I got into franchising is it's just more scientifically interesting. In a science experiment, you have your controls and you have variables. So a franchise system, it's all these people doing the same thing. There's a lot of controls. So I really wanted to pay attention to what were the variables? What was the difference between top performers and everyone else? And what I discovered is, in spite of the myths, it's not about location. It's not about how many hours you put in. It's not how educated you are. The biggest differentiator between top performers and everyone else was their mindset, or what I call those human elements that each of us bring to our own business. The franchisor doesn't control. So that is our willingness to trust, how quickly we're willing to adapt to change, how focused we are on a larger philosophy, our ability to bounce back when things get tough, to keep our emotions and our feelings in check. When I've interviewed all these top franchisees, which I did, for many years, and certainly as I was writing The Wealthy Franchisee, these are the things they all had in common, regardless of the sector or the type of business they had in franchising. That mindset was that differentiator. That was the variable. That is the variable that gives them their edge. And the same is true for people who really struggle. It's their mindset that prevents them from doing well because they're getting in their own way.
Well, you talk about that commonality across brands like McDonald's, Subway, Edible, Anytime Fitness. Doesn't matter the sector. What have you seen and learned about new franchisees who come into a system or franchising, Scott, thinking it's guaranteed success? What are some of the misconceptions or traps that new franchisees fall into, thinking that the playbook's going to automatically guarantee success?
That you're going to get slapped in the face with reality really quick. And look, I remember, even me, when I signed on for the franchise, right, I had this vision of what it was going to be, which is really what I wanted it to be, right? No one goes into franchising and saying, gosh, I can't wait to have employees ghost on me. I can't wait to get a bad review online.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have the vendor not show up with supplies on time. No one's fantasizing about that. We're fantasizing about everything going well. And certainly the franchisor sort of feeds into that as they're trying to sell us the franchise and get us excited. But the fact is, running a business is really tough and things happen. And so I think the truth and our own abilities, it comes out during those times. So, I think that you have to go into it that it's not easy, that, anybody can give you a tool, a tool that if used properly can do great things. But if you don't use it properly, it's not going to do great things. And so I don't care what brand it is, how good the franchisor is, or how good the system is. If you don't stick to that system, if you don't market, if you don't master yourself and manage yourself first, you're not going to get the results you want.
great advice for not only new franchisees but all franchisees. One of the things I was recently talking to somebody about, a franchise owner, was the challenge of not understanding that you are managing labor, maybe a different employee base than if you were working corporate, et cetera. As an owner and a franchisee, how can franchise owners create cultures where employees they don't feel just managed but motivated? How can owners do that? And how did you do it, Scott?
It has to be done deliberately, that you have to prioritize culture as much as you prioritize sales, as much as you prioritize, the delivery of your products and services. It can't just be an afterthought. It can't just be something you do on occasion. And most people in business, I've learned, don't know what culture is. Because when I ask them, hey, what do you do to build culture? They start listing me all the ways in which they're nice to their employees.
Yeah.
Starting with, we buy them pizza. I'm so tired of hearing about pizza as if that's the solution to all people issues. But they'll tell me about how they buy them food, or they celebrate their birthday, or they treat them like family, like all these things. That just means you're a decent person. Yeah. That's not culture.
Right.
Culture refers to our way of doing things, and what makes us different than that other business, that other country, that other religion, that other family. Every group of two or more people has their way of doing things. And so the idea for a business is to define the kind of culture you want to have, and every day have rituals and practices, things you say or do, your way of doing things that represent that culture. And so we have to have, figure out, okay, so first of all, what is the culture you want to have? You need to be able to really be able to envision it. Then you need to be able to describe it and translate that to others, right? And it can't be broad things like, oh, it's family and broad values, integrity, fun, like really clarify what it is. Then it needs to be articulated to employees and then reinforced with employees through ongoing discussion. And for many great organizations, it might be a daily huddle or a weekly meeting where they discuss it, and then rituals that reinforce it. Again, a huddle might be part of that. Yeah. Or, Ritz-Carlton is famous for, all the rituals that they have. And they really sell the idea of culture, our way of doing things. So it has to be deliberate and ongoing, and you have to be committed to it. But boy, when you do, you're going to attract more people, retain more people, and have a motivated team that are going to be loyal to the company.
Got it. And you talk about that in your new book, Stop the Shift Show. What inspired you to write that book about managing the hourly workforce and today's employees?
Two specific things. One was in the Wealthy Franchisee, I do have one small section I write about managing employees. Mm-hmm. That is the section that created the most engagement. People emailing me or coming up to me after a presentation, or even franchise brands wanting me to speak specifically on that. So I saw there was that need. The second thing was that I got a really angry email from someone. I wrote an article in Nation's Restaurant News that was about helping your customer service employees in restaurants pay more attention to the emotional state of people who are in line. Right. I try to figure out, what state they're in, and then try to mirror that, just basic neuro-linguistic programming, just to break them out of the robotics, right? Yeah. It was, a pretty innocuous article. The next day, I get this really angry email from this guy. He was like, I read your article, and have you ever actually run a business before? I can barely get my employees to show up, let alone become armchair psychologists. Yeah. Like, he was so triggered by it. And I thought, okay, he's really frustrated. And rather than getting angry back, I always think, what's the opportunity here? Right. And so it's to help people like him understand that, it can be done. Okay. So I went out and I found workplaces with those kinds of employees who are doing great things. Yeah. And took that deep dive and wrote the book. So it's really to help people understand that even with, hourly employees, you might have, fewer skills, lesser education. I talk about the differences between hourly workers and those on salary. But even with that group, with the right management, you can make great things happen with a team.
Well, you talk about the difference between service and hospitality in the book. How can franchisees teach their teams to create that emotional connection? Is there one or two things that you've seen work that can help a franchisee help their team create a connection with their customers?
Sure. First of all, I don't believe that any discussion of customer service is complete without discussing employees. because they're the ones who are delivering the product
Yeah.
and services.
Yeah.
They can't create a great customer experience unless they are having a great work experience. So that's part of what ownership management needs to do first, is to take care of those employees, because there's a connection between culture and brand. Brand is how a company feels on the outside. Culture is how that company feels on the inside. So you have to establish that strong service-oriented culture that's there. Then we need to really help employees understand that their job isn't simply to deliver the product and service.
Yeah.
It's to facilitate an emotional experience that lifts people up, right? So, if you say next customer in line, you take their order, you give them the order in a way that is, that is affordable, quick, meets their needs. Well, that's just you keeping your promise.
Right.
That's good customer service. Hospitality is in the process of delivering that. You're making them feel great.
Right.
You're making them think, wow, this is different. I feel better than when I came in. That's a differentiator. So it's got to be discussed and talked about. And employees need to understand the importance of that.
And maybe examples. Someone was speaking about the Chick-fil-A employee base and how I think the CEO indicated it took 6 or 7 years to get the habit for all employees throughout the chain to say it's my pleasure when a customer says thank you. Is that a good example that can be used to differentiate that brand with their?
Yeah, I think the elements that create that feeling of hospitality, they're small and they're nuanced, but it's the little things that make a difference. So if you thank me and I say no problem,
Yeah.
you're not going to be offended. But what's that saying? It's like, oh, hey, you didn't offend me.
Right.
It's making it about me,
Yeah.
right? And compared to my pleasure, I guess technically that's also about me. But what it's communicating is you, by coming to me, by asking me for an extra cup or a napkin or something like that, not only is it not a problem, but it's wonderful. It's fantastic. That little difference in language contributes to that general feeling of, wow, this is a really great place where I'm surrounded by people who are excited by the idea of making me happy, of meeting my needs, of preparing my food. So so Chick-fil-A, they're great at that. They understand those little things, and they also make taking care of employees a priority. I would say the same thing for In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah. How so?
Again, me being from Southern California, there's a certain loyalty there. It's a big California brand.
Yeah.
My son worked there. It was his first job, and he was taught culture.
Yeah.
And he was taught about the importance of that. And he would speak the language and he would do that in the same sort of way. And they had similar phrases. And you feel it as a customer. You go through the drive-through. Every person you interact with, and usually interacting with at least 2 or 3 people. It might be someone outside taking the order,
Right.
the person you pay, the person who gives you your food. You can tell that there's a joy, that there's a happiness that's there.
Yeah.
And they're trained to be that way.
You can feel it too. I'm living on the East Coast. I took my children to Los Angeles or West Coast, and they had the first In-N-Out experience, and it was palpable, right? Came outside or the drive. A lot of small things that made an impact and really stuck with them and me. So let's talk a little bit about resilience and personal growth. You talked about your early diagnosis and battle, so to speak, with cancer, and you've overcome cancer twice while building your business and speaking career. How did those experiences shape the way you lead and coach others?
I think in business, it's easy to get caught up in all the day-to-day tasks. You're on a franchise. There's just so much that's got to get done. Those pizzas have got to be, baked and boxed and sent out the door. And I mean, there's so much that has to be done. And I think that every now and then life gives us these reminders that we need to take a step back and ask the bigger questions. And so for me, not that I want to go through the cancer again, I had 2 separate cancers in my life, both very heavy, dramatic, and things that I've overcome. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but I am grateful because both of them caused me to stop and take a step back and ask bigger, deeper questions. And so you got to be resilient, not just busy when you're running a business. You need a larger sense of purpose. You need context for what you're doing. And so for me, I think our problems can put us in perspective if we're willing to control our emotions and take a step back and ask the bigger questions. And those experiences also make us stronger.
Yeah.
I really believe, that's a bit of a cliche, but I really think there's opportunities that come from moments of adversity. And that's what those experiences did for me.
I agree with you. You know, one door closes, another opens. A cliche, but I believe that as well, and you've proven it. In your TEDx talk, you talk about how pain can be productive. What advice do you have for business leaders to help them translate their own setbacks into growth? Are there some small habits or things you do to clear your mind and focus on what it needs to be resilient? Do you only give yourself a certain amount of time to deal with that setback, then move on? But what advice or what things could they do to develop that resilience muscle, so to speak?
Okay. Yeah. Well, first, I'd recommend doing an exercise that I talk about pretty extensively in that TED talk. Something I did during the pandemic when my speaking business just got destroyed, right? My whole calendar got cleared. And I was sitting at my kitchen table and I just started contemplating my whole life from graduating college up until this moment. And I plotted all the highs and lows of my career, of my life on a graph. And all those highs I called my time spent in the green zone. The lows, those experiences, my time spent in the red zone. So I plotted them all chronologically, and then I connected the dots with lines tracing the life path. And when I looked at my life that way, there's a couple things that I noticed. First is every drop to the red zone was always followed by a huge jump back to the green zone, usually higher than I was to begin with, always. Didn't see the jump coming, but it always happened. But the second thing that was fascinating was those massive jumps to the green zone were usually caused by what happened in the red zone, that the prosperity was usually caused by the adversity, either because there was a new opportunity or because it forced me to do things differently. So what I've learned is that we can't judge our experiences by how pleasant they are, right? Something might be incredibly unpleasant, but it might be productive. When you lift weights, you're tearing your muscle, but that causes the muscle to heal back bigger and stronger. And so I think our experiences are the same way. So I would encourage other people to do the same thing with their lives, to trace the past so they can see the pattern. And that in itself might give perspective. Then the other thing is this, that once you're in those moments of adversity, first control your emotion. And that means, take a deep breath, go for a walk, meditate, talk to a therapist, whatever gets you to calm down. You got to clear your head first. And that's when you can start to see the opportunities that are there. What we don't want to do is have knee-jerk reactions and let your emotions influence your decisions.
I love it. Great advice. And a lot of stories like that in the pandemic. I remember as a banker lending to large Planet Fitness, Orange Theory, other chains that EBITDA went to zero and no revenue because of the shutdown. Some of the best innovation came out of that that I saw. So great advice. So let's talk franchising and the future, Scott. You've worked with hundreds of franchise systems around the world, different sectors. How do you see franchising evolving over the next decade? Let's start with the United States and then internationally, if you have any context for that.
Yeah, well, there's some things that we've been seeing, which we'll continue to see, in my opinion. I think we're going to continue to see lots of mergers and acquisitions and consolidation, right? Bigger fish, eating other fish.
Yeah.
A lot of brands emerging with that in mind. I think that is going to continue. If interest rates come down, which seems to be the case, that certainly affects, lending and money being available, that kind of thing. And so that might stimulate franchising. I think that if discussion's able to move away from joint employer, which is currently the case, I'm hoping then that franchise brands will do what I've been suggesting, which is my work, which is really focusing on helping franchisees become better managers and helping them lead their people. But here's one thing that I see happening that concerns me. The AI thing, technology in general, but AI specifically, it's coming in fast, it's coming in hard, it's coming in hot.
Yeah, it is.
And there's a million companies coming out with all these technologies and all these solutions. And again, my whole thing, my jam is about the human side of business, how we think, how we lead, and how we feel. And I think that a lot of companies are promising to solve big problems just with technology, certainly with AI. And my concern is that companies are going to rely a little too heavily on AI to do their recruiting and interviewing and selection, that they're going to rely on AI to facilitate transactions. And a lot of companies are then going to take their their eye off the ball, which is how they make people feel.
Right, right.
That I think leaning away from the human side is a mistake. I think AI and these tools are incredibly important tools to help enhance that
Yeah.
experience. But I think that we are going to need to be that much more deliberate about how we interact human to human and how we make people feel. I think that has always been and always will be the greatest opportunity.
You jumped. I was just going to ask you about AI and technology, and I love that point, which is it can improve productivity, right, and make the systems better. However, don't lose sight of the hospitality and customer component of it. The great advice. So, with more multi-unit operators entering the space or becoming prevalent, or even multi-brand multi-unit operators, what do you see as some leadership qualities that'll be that are most essential to scale successfully?
You're talking about the franchisor level or with like
The
multi-unit
franchisee. So,
franchisees?
with more, it seems more multi-unit operators for somebody who's maybe a single unit or a few units. What are some key things to do to make sure you can scale efficiently to 10 units and beyond as a franchisee?
I'm sure plenty of people will argue at this point, but
Or
for
let's
me,
hear it.
I think the biggest jump in franchising is going from one to two.
1 or 2. Okay.
Right? The reason why I say that is when you're a single unit, you can just have bought yourself a job
Yeah.
and just do it all yourself, as far too many people do. I think maybe approximately half of all franchise units are single unit. So it literally could be mom and pop just doing it all themselves, which is fine, I guess, if that's what you want. But the moment you open up a second location where you have two businesses open at the same time, you've got no choice but to grow leaders. You've got no choice but to delegate and to make it less about you and more about systems.
Right.
Once you've done that, then you can start to scale those things. But to go from just being you doing all the work and you overseeing everything to letting go and having systems, which is what franchising is designed for, that's a massive step for people to take. And I love that because it brings out the best. In order to grow leaders, you yourself have to lead better. That you yourself have to think about other people, think less about you, more about the systems. And I think that's just so important in business. So I'd love to see more franchisors really explaining that path. Obviously, they want to encourage people to open more units, but I think there can be even better education about going from single to multiple.
Got it. We agree with you here at Babson. There's a lot of different traits, right? From opening the 1 unit, then to managing 2 or 3 or 4. Well, let's talk a little bit about a new franchisee. What one piece of advice would you have to a new franchisee before they open their first unit, or even select the brand?
I would tell a new franchisee to remember that nothing will impact the business more than you. You will either be an asset or you will be a liability. And you'll never know how good the business can be unless you are at your absolute best. So I would say don't go into it relying on the franchisor. They'll do what's in the franchise agreement, right? But ultimately, it's on you.
Yeah.
So you need to lead, you need to serve, you need to bounce. And so spend a lot of time being self-aware. Put your ego aside, be a student of the business, and use your business to improve the lives of everyone it touches.
Bigger impact. And I remember hearing you speak and you talk about 2 franchisees. I can't remember their fictitious names being in the same system with different mindsets, different approaches, and one being a wealthy franchisee, so to speak, as you define it, and the other maybe not employing those skills in that bigger picture that you talk about. So that's great advice. You can kind of control your own mindset, right? Well, what's the one thing you wish more franchisors understood about their franchisees or franchisees in general?
Yeah, I think that franchisors need to appreciate that franchisees make it about them.
Yeah.
I'll speak in the first person that if I'm the franchisee and you're my franchisor, you don't have feelings. You don't have goals. You don't have wants. You exist. You wake up in the morning to serve me. I've paid you money. I pay a royalty. So I expect you to revolve around me. I'm not saying this is good thinking. I'm just saying it's what we do.
Yeah.
And so franchisees need to be cared for in a certain way. So there's probably no one on earth who's heard more state of the franchise speeches than I have. Typical day at work for me is I go to a franchise convention. I'll listen to the CEO or the president give the state of the franchise. So I've heard a lot of these. And too often, the CEO or whoever's talking about it isn't thinking about things from the franchisee's perspective. Yeah. So they'll start talking about how much the company's grown, how many units they've sold. And every franchisee is thinking the same thing. What does that mean for me?
Right.
What does that mean for my business? So you're getting more franchise fees. You have locations 3,000 miles away from me. What does that mean for me? Right? That we're not as invested in the overall brand we should be, but so many of us don't think that way. We're only thinking about our own stores. Yeah. And so I think franchisors need to speak the language they get and help them understand that with more locations, the whole brand lifts up, the value of every unit lifts up. So I think that franchisors need to do a better job of really understanding the franchisee perspective in every area of the business, that they need to listen, that they need to communicate, they need to explain the reasons for their decisions, and that franchisees need to be held accountable from the very beginning. Like, don't just say you'll be in business, for yourself, but not by yourself. You know what? There's a certain by yourself aspect to it.
Yeah. That
you're steering your own ship. And let's not mislead franchisees into thinking that as a franchisor, that you've always got their back and let's be realistic about what that is. So franchisees will step up because they have to.
Yeah. It's lonely being an entrepreneur and a franchisee. That's great advice. Some of the best franchisors, CEOs, founders that we've spoken to and I've worked with really want the franchisee to be successful, to create millionaires, I've heard folks say. And that goes a long way. And that means being in the stores, understanding what their daily life is like. Great advice. All right, we're going to transition to what we call our lightning round of some rapid fire insights. You up for it?
Well, I guess we're about to find out.
Let's see. All right. All right. First thing you do before a keynote. Like, what gets you going? How do you prep for a keynote? Just, what comes to mind? The first thing you do to get ready for a keynote speech?
In the weeks leading up to it, I research the company and think about the content, that sort of thing. In the moments, I take deep breaths because I still get very nervous before going on stage.
Well, they say, like the top performer, if you don't, then something's wrong. All right, I love it. One word that describes your leadership style, Scott.
Reflective.
Reflective, okay. How about, you've been all over the world speaking. Do you have any favorite cities? Favorite city you've been to and spoken to a group in front of?
There's awesome cities that I've been to, and there's awesome audiences, and they're not necessarily one in the same. Honestly, I used to do motivational speaking for teenagers, and I spoke at a conference with 17,000 teenagers in an arena, and thank God it went well. It could have gone the other direction, but when you can connect with them, the energy you get is unbelievable. Plus 17,000 people, so that was great. But I've spoken to some pretty awesome places, in the Caribbean and Hawaii and Croatia, and it's an honor to be paid to take these trips and go to these places.
Well, I love how you shifted it to the audience. I mean, I like that question better, and the impact and the engagement. That's telling.
Well, a big meeting room in Paris is no different than a meeting room in Irvine, California, right? So it really comes down to the group itself.
It does. You're so right. Can you talk about a franchise brand that impresses you now? That's out in the market and maybe things they're doing or trajectory that's on?
Gosh, okay. Well, technically it's a franchise. The Los Angeles Dodgers.
Oh, there we go. All right. We're
not quite what you had in mind, but I don't know when this is going to air, but right now in the World Series, and we're up 2-1. There are so many that I admire. I've written about Anytime Fitness.
Yeah.
I think they're great. Their leadership has always just been incredible. They've understood culture from the very beginning. I'm a big fan of Jersey Mike's,
Yeah.
and their CEO and founder. I interviewed him for the Wealthy Franchisee.
Great.
I think they're great. There's a lot of great brands out there that are truly committed to franchisee success, more so than even the franchisees realize. But I think those are a couple brands where franchisees get it and appreciate it.
Got it. All right, back to your edible arrangements, franchisee life, and maybe after as a customer. What's your favorite edible arrangements creation?
Oh, I'm a traditionalist. Just dip a strawberry in chocolate, and I'm golden. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to the walk-in freezer and made bad choices and just grabbed one because it was there. And there's a line in in Scarface,
Yeah.
right, where they keep saying, "Don't get high on your own supply." I probably had a lot more chocolate-covered strawberries than I should have.
I hear you. They're hard to pass up.
There,
What one word would you use today to describe the franchise landscape?
opportunity.
Opportunity. Yeah. A lot of, you mentioned it earlier, Scott. We didn't follow up on it, but it's really amazing and impressive. There's always new franchise brands, coming and evolving, even in categories you think are saturated, whether it's chicken or fitness. That doesn't mean they're all successful, but I think you're right. I think it's a model for opportunity assessment and creation. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think it's great. I think it's misunderstood. I wish that, politicians understood it more, that the general public understood it more, because it's a great way for someone to, maybe they don't have an idea, but they have, some money to invest and they've got a work ethic. There's just so many opportunities for so many people.
Well, I really appreciate our time together, Scott. Really insightful from your background as a franchisee, but also a speaker, and love your perspective on life. And one final question to leave our audience with: how do you define success today for you and for franchise owners and franchisors? What is success? Is it linked to the experience? What is it?
Okay, well, so in the very beginning of the Wealthy Franchisee, I define what it means to be a wealthy franchisee. It means, number one, you're getting a good financial return relative to your investment, that you're in control of your time, and that you have quality of life. To me, that's what it means to be a wealthy franchisee. So all my work is about helping people achieve all three of those things. For me personally, the way I define success is I wake up in the morning and I get to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
That whole in control of your time thing, based on my values, that's what's most important. So as long as I'm able to do that, then I feel like I'm living a good life and I'm successful.
Great stuff. Well, we're really glad to have you on Stars of Franchising Season 2. Best wishes going forward, and look forward to more collaboration with you, Scott.
Me as well. Thanks for having me.
And good luck to your Dodgers.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Stars of Franchising.
Stars of Franchising was produced at Babson College, engineered by Travis Gray. Karen Soa is our guest coordinator, and music by Ralph Taylor.
If you like Stars of Franchising, be sure to review us wherever you get your podcasts, and spread the word and share these stories any way you can.